It's Roll Tide versus on Wisconsin. The quarterbacks could decide this matchup. We got Luke Robinson, Ryan Herring's a Locked On crossover. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, college football fans? We got Luke Robinson, Locked On Bama, Ryan Herring's Locked On Badgers. We are excited to talk about a big matchup this weekend. Thank you for being an everydayer and making this one of your first listens every single day on both of our channels. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is here finally, and we're excited for it. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your future bets now. Luke, I think we got to talk a little bit about quarterbacks in this game. Tell me about Ty Simpson. What does he look like for Bama, and how is he going to impact this game this weekend?
Well, I really like Ty Simpson, and there's some folks that sort of jumped ship after the Florida State game. I'm going to tell you, I don't think the Florida State game was his problem. I think the rest of the team, in a lot of aspects, let the team down. But here's the thing, and Ty Simpson was 17 of 17 in his last game. He had, I think, 3 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing. I mean, he's just he's very good. He was a 5-star coming out of Tennessee. His dad is a football coach. He's not a party animal. Like, he goes to bed at 9, wakes up at 5, always in the facility, all those things. But so far, he has been less dynamic and more game manager. There's nothing wrong with that. And you can win with that. Alabama's won national championships with that. The problem is you have to have a national championship winning defense or a Heisman Trophy winning running back like a Derrick Henry to make it work. Now, maybe if Ryan Williams steps his game back up to pre-Georgia standards from last year, then I think this team can make some moves, and maybe there will be some more dynamic plays, some more big plays. Right now, Alabama hadn't had a lot of them in 2 games. And I'm pro Ty Simpson. I don't want to get it twisted. At the same time, I look at Austin Mack and especially Keelan Russell, the true freshman, who I think has just got an absolutely super bright future. Gatorade National Player of the Year last year. And I go, okay, those guys probably can make more plays because we have a small sample size with Ty Simpson, and I haven't seen a lot of big plays yet. Maybe some of them happen this weekend, though.
Let me ask a follow-up on with Simpson. We'll get into Daniel Neal and the Badgers quarterback situation. The Badgers have been pretty good stopping the run this year. Is Ty Simpson a guy that if Wisconsin says you need to beat us, we're going to potentially take away the run, that's what we're going to try to do, can he be a guy that wins the game by himself against a good defense?
Yes, and the reason I think he can is because I don't think he's going to have a lot of mistakes. The thing about Ty is while he is not making a lot of big-time plays, he's not making any mistakes. He doesn't have a turnover yet this year. He doesn't have a fumble or an interception. And as I said, he was 17 of 17 in this last game. That's tough to do against anybody. I don't care who you are. So I think he's the kind of guy that's not going to get you beat, but he might be the guy that doesn't necessarily get you the win either. I mean, I don't know that he could have a Bryce Young moment. Maybe he can. I just haven't seen that capability yet. I think that if Wisconsin is going to sell out to stop the run, I think it's going to be a problem for Wisconsin because I believe that our receivers are better than our running backs.
Interesting point. So the Wisconsin Badgers coming into this weekend. I know Bama fans remember last year, Alabama came up to Madison. And by the way, I had a ton of Wisconsin fans just reach out to me and tell me how much fun it was interacting with Bama fans that came up. I think there was some really good interactions there. Bama fans.
I think they all interacted with me. I was the one that was there.
They liked it. I think it was a really good time between the fan bases up until the point y'all beat us by 32. Then it got a little salty.
I need to show you a picture I got. I was in the stadium, of course, and it was fun. And jump around wasn't as much fun as I wanted it to be because it was a butt kicking at that time, and so a lot of people had left. And also, 11 o'clock in the morning game, I can't believe we got another one. I mean, just come on. But I took a screenshot of a kid that was sitting next to me, and he was texting a friend, and he just texted, "Oh my God, Bama's really good," and it was just kind of funny. But I had a blast up there. Look, I can't say enough good things about it. I went with a group that I go to a away game every single year. This year we're going to Missouri. We've been to Penn State. We've been to LSU and Tennessee and all these Georgia. And last year we went to Wisconsin and had a great time. And it was just a fun. I wish that we had more of those types of games. But I hope that a lot of Wisconsin people are planning to come down here. I think you will find that while Wisconsin is super fun, I'm not trying to take anything away from that. It's more religion down here. And I don't mean that to say, it means more to us, but it kind of might mean more to us. I don't know. It's just the SEC is a different animal in that regard. It's all palpable. It's all in the air. And so I think everybody will come down and have a really good time and go, whoa, that we need more of that. And I'm hoping it's contagious and spreads throughout the country.
I love it. I agree with you. These out-of-conference matchups, the home and homes, like the neutral site stuff is fine, but the home and homes where you get to go and you get to see the environment and the ecosystem of these incredible places. I would have loved to come down to Bryant Denny this weekend. I just couldn't make it, but it saddens me that I can't because I would love to see a game in that environment and that atmosphere. So,
and the guys that come are going to be extremely fortunate. Because even though it's going to be the middle of September, usually about this time, it's still in the 90s. Humidity's going nuts. And it's going to be very, very nice Saturday, apparently. So, like in the low 80s, just perfect. And you guys won't understand what we're talking about. Like in the summer, it is just like mosquitoes don't even want to be around here. But it's going to be very nice, which is very unseasonable and very lucky for all of us.
So I'll tell you, I know exactly where that is and what that's like because for a couple of years I was stationed in Georgia. I was stationed in southern Georgia. So summers there can be different to your point.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the Badgers backup quarterback. And I'm curious, after I tell you what he's like, who he is, I'm curious how Bama's defense might defend him. I think it's an interesting conversation. So the Badgers, once again, down their starting quarterback. Daniel O'Neal will be the guy. He's kind of an interesting player. Started all of last year for San Diego State. Pretty mobile, total gamer. He reminds me a little bit of some of the Iowa State type quarterbacks. I've mentioned that, like a Brock Purdy type, where he's more mobile than he looks. He extends plays. He can move with his feet. He will test a defense a little bit in terms of he's not a statue in the pocket. Pretty accurate, but not a great arm. So when you hear something like that, I'm curious because that is kind of the archetype of a quarterback that's given Bama some issues in the past. The mobile quarterbacks, the guys who can get out of the pocket a little bit, can move. How is Bama's defense set up this year? Is that something that you think could be a challenge for Alabama?
I think Bama's defense right now is under the gun in the sense that they played really well and got a shutout last week. But the week before against Florida State, they just fell for every trick in the book. It seemed like, Gus Malzahn, a lot of reverses and fake reverses and double whoopies and all this other stuff. And it seemed like Alabama fell for a lot of the misdirection, the eye candy, as Nick Saban used to call it. And so I know Wisconsin is sort of into that too. So that worries me to a degree. But I was reading a report about one of maybe Wisconsin's fastest wide receiver. And at the same time, the Wisconsin beat writer was like, yeah, he's our fastest, but Alabama's probably got 10 guys on defense that are just as fast as he is. And that may be true. And so I think the speed of Alabama may make up for some of the lack of discipline they have on some of these misdirection plays. So I'm hoping that's the case. But I really believe in Luke Fickell. I think he's a good coach. Now, one thing I do want to address, and Jimmy Stein, my co-host on Locked On Bama, and I talk about this all the time. You mentioned that Alabama has historically had a problem with mobile quarterbacks. Yes and no. Yes, as long as that mobile quarterback is a Heisman Trophy candidate or plays particularly out of his mind in that game, just because it's a big moment. Because everybody goes, mobile quarterbacks. Yeah, mobile quarterbacks, you mean like Johnny Manziel and Cam Newton and Tim Tebow. Yeah, those guys gave us fits. Guess what? They gave everybody fits. And guess what? They all won Heismans. So Deshaun Watson, an incredible, notwithstanding what's happened in Cleveland or Houston, but he was incredible in college, absolutely unstoppable at times. So, yeah, those guys have given Alabama fits. Nick Marshall at Auburn, he was a fantastic mobile quarterback, and he was so fast that it made up for any deficiencies he had in throwing the football on occasion. So, yeah, I mean, those guys have given Alabama problems. But this guy, Danny O'Neal, I like him. I do. I think that if I'm not mistaken, he's like one of 2 true freshmen to start last year in the country. Not bad. Big deal. And, he's also got some experience under his belt in, I'm going to say, the Big Ten, even though they haven't played a Big Ten team. He has played in Big Ten environments at home. This is going to be a different environment. My guess is this will be the most people he's ever played in front of. And the crowd should be pretty ravenous. I mean, Alabama fans were kind of ticked off last week. And then when the team responded and played so well, I think we're back to like, all right, let's all get behind this thing. It's just one loss. Let's just move forward. So I think the crowd ought to be pretty well into it.
I think you made a really good point there. And then we got to take a quick break. The point of, those quarterbacks give a lot of people problems. I think that's very salient. Really good athletic dual threat guys tend to give every defense problems. And I think that is a super fair point to bring up. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the coaches in this game, maybe break down some of the X's and O's on both sides and what that home environment could look like for Alabama. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our incredible friends of the show over at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, which is the best part of college football. It's that weekend game. It's time to look back and look forward. Like, who delivered last weekend? Who could deliver this weekend? Powered by our good friends over at DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. This is a player that delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Lance Mason for the Wisconsin Badgers last week, the tight end, 7 catches, 102 yards on misdirection, wheel routes, seam routes. They used him everywhere. He absolutely delivered. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching this show and others, you see those type of players that show up every week. Those are the type of players you follow. And just like Lance Mason delivered for the Badgers, DoorDash delivers for your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms do apply. Promo period through 11/18. All right, Luke, let's jump back into this. Talk a little bit about I actually really wanted to ask you this because I had a different I had Brian Smith on, Locked On Knowles. Obviously, saw some of your game, a lot of your game week 1. And he actually had an interesting comment about Bryant Denny. And I wanted to ping you on it. He said, Bryant Denny is maybe not the most intimidating place in the SEC. And I'm not saying this to try to put Brian on blast, but Badger fans are coming down there are actually curious how tough is this road environment going to be for a redshirt freshman, or I'm sorry, for a sophomore, Danny O'Neal, to your point, that hasn't played in front of this many people. How tough is that going to be for him?
I have no problem saying this. In terms of intimidation, I don't think Bryant Denny is in the top 4 or 5 in the SEC. I mean, when you think intimidation and you think like incredibly this cacophony of sounds, I think it's like LSU. I think Neyland, which is just monstrous. Obviously, I think Auburn's got Mississippi State, for that matter, with all the cowbells. Arizona State just found out, right? The thing about Bryant Denny is it feels like the way Alabama fans are, in my perspective, that it's become like a temple to college football. Now, it doesn't mean it's the rowdiest. We sort of act like, when you come in here, we should kick your butt. But we don't look at it like the crowd's going to force you to do it. We're like, our team's going to do the talking for us. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way or anything like that. But Bryant Denny probably is one of the nicer stadiums in the country. I'd put it up against anybody's. It's pretty incredible. And they just announced today that they're going to add some more skyboxes. It's pretty loaded up. I mean, I wish you could go because it's pretty incredible. The Bryant Museum, which is very close, also very cool. The surroundings of it, all the antebellum homes for the sorority and fraternity houses, it's all incredible stuff, right? But it does feel like sometimes we could be louder. But the thing that makes it intimidating is that it's Alabama you're playing against. Right. And even when, say, go back to 2005 with Mike Shula, that team wasn't full of Nick Saban dudes. They had Brody Croyle, who weighed 125 pounds soaking wet. They had Tyrone Prother, who ended up tragically breaking his leg in that game and probably destroying his Heisman chances. And they had some other guys like Keith Brown. They had some dudes, but they didn't have Nick Saban dudes. And they still whooped a Florida team that a lot of people thought could win a national championship that year. By the way, I was at that game, and Tim Tebow was on a visit for that game. Pretty incredible. But so what I think the fans are going to see, the Wisconsin fans that come down there, not necessarily that they're just going to be worried for their lives or anything like that. Like when you go to an LSU game, if you start some stuff, you'll get some stuff. But if you come to Alabama, I think what they'll see is, as long as nobody's like trying to pick a fight, I think that everything will be just fine, and I think they'll really enjoy like a true sense of college football. I think it's really a great place to be. But he's right. It's not the most intimidating venue in the country. I have no problem saying that.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin fans are very excited for it, though. I already had some that said they're excited to go to the Bryant Museum, and I think I've said this before on a different show. I think Southern fans, Wisconsin fans, there's actually a lot of similarities. Good people, pretty chill. Yeah. They like food. They love football. They're polite. I think the fan bases generally get along and vibe pretty well. Let's talk coaches. I think both of our coaches have kind of an interesting story coming in here. How much pressure is Kalen DeBoer in coming into this game, this season, potentially? Week 1 probably didn't help. What's that like right now?
Well, week 1 definitely didn't help. 13.5 point favorite, and you lose by 14. And you lose also to what Alabama fans would consider somewhat, not an arch nemesis, but a nemesis in Gus Malzahn. And of course, Alabama and Florida State had some history, and that Alabama stole their spot in the playoff a couple of years ago. So there was a lot of storylines there, and Alabama just didn't come to play. And Kalen DeBoer is like 1-4. Or maybe 2-4, something like that on the road. Not great. You can't go to Vanderbilt and lose if you're Alabama. I don't care if it's the best Vanderbilt we've seen in God knows how long. You don't need to go to Tennessee and just have mistake after mistake after mistake. Alabama should have won that game. And then they go to Oklahoma and just nobody shows up. Just nobody. And it was just a bad look. And of course, the Michigan game was bad. Michigan was missing all these folks, and they just took it to Bama, and it felt like Bama didn't want to be there. And so it's we're waiting to see Kalen DeBoer on the road perform really well. Now, we won't get that opportunity for a couple of weeks at Georgia, but he's performed pretty well at home. He hadn't lost a home game yet. And, he had that masterful game against Georgia last year. At least most of it was masterful. Georgia came back to the lead, and Alabama ended up winning. But, he also somehow went to LSU and destroyed a good LSU team. I still don't get that. But I think that Kalen DeBoer is under some pressure. Last week helped, and it also helped that the players seem to really have his back. And I think some fans are sort of down with that. Like, I don't think it's disingenuous either. I think the players really like Kalen DeBoer and like this staff. So I think the fans are understanding of that. Meanwhile, on the other side, Luke Fickell, who took Cincinnati to the playoffs and played Alabama, ironically. He's now at Wisconsin, and I cannot believe it hasn't gone better. What's the reason that it hadn't gone better?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you went back to that Bama-Cincinnati game. I mean, Cincinnati played pretty well, actually, considering the talent gap in that game and the stakes. They held in for about a half before Bama wore them down. I think so why it hasn't worked for Fickell, there was a really poor offensive coordinator decision, just in hindsight. Phil Longo coming in. He hired him from North Carolina. Longo was coming in to implement his version of the air raid at Wisconsin. And I'm not going to say you can't do that at Wisconsin, but Phil Longo couldn't do it. It didn't work. It really set the program back a couple years. So that happened. Then they've had quarterback injuries. Every year the starting quarterback's been hurt. It's hard to kind of rebuild a program, get going in the right direction when you make an offensive coordinator decision that didn't work and your quarterbacks get hurt every season. So it's been a combination, if you have to pin it down, maybe those are the two biggest factors, but they also weren't as good defensively last year as they've been in the past either. You're thinking about a Wisconsin team that puts historically a lot of NFL players into the league at linebacker, at edge, the Watts, Zach Bond, Van Ginkel, you can go on and on. They really didn't have any difference makers on defense in the front seven last year. So a lack of talent on defense and then some poor coaching decisions on offense have probably been the biggest contributors. They do feel really good with the pivot they've made from Phil Longo's. Nothing you can do in the past, but moving forward, what are we going to do as a program? Who are we going to be? Jeff Grimes comes in, Kansas offensive coordinator last year, Baylor before that, BYU before that, and he wants to run the ball. He wants to look more like Wisconsin, almost like a Paul Chryst modernized version of Wisconsin, where A lot of misdirection. Actually, I'm really curious about this, and this probably in our next segment, we talk X's and O's. You mentioned some of the misdirection that at times have maybe played with Alabama's defense, the eyes a little bit. Grimes wants to do a ton of that. Reverses, different looks, misdirection. That's what he wants to do. So for Bama fans tuning into this game, you're going to see a lot of attempts by Wisconsin because Wisconsin isn't going to win one-on-one against the athletes at Alabama. They're just not. But they are going to try to get a false step. If you can negate athleticism if you can make a linebacker take 2 false steps. If you can take a safety and move his eyes around. So that is what the Wisconsin offense is going to do. Will Bama fall for it or will they not? I think it's going to be one of the keys to this game. But you're dead on. I'm surprised it hasn't worked better for Luke Fickell. A lot of people were. That was looked at as a home run hire for the Badgers. And you're dead on. It just hasn't fully worked out yet.
I'll tell you, the comparison I see is Wisconsin sort of Nebraska themselves in the sense that when I think Wisconsin, you think Ron Dane and Melvin Gordon and just a litany of other running backs that, I mean, it seemed like every year they just put some big beefcake running back out there who just loved to run over folks, and he could also run pretty fast. Well, they bring Luke Fickell in. Like you said, they go to Phil Longo, a little bit more pass happy, sort of like I think it was Bill Callahan at Nebraska. Decided, we're going to, change things up and modernize it. The problem with that is you are what you are. Be who you are. Wisconsin is rough and tumble, and they want to get in the mud with you a little bit. That's historically, and that's what they do. Nebraska the same way. Yeah, I guess if the best coach, the right coach came in, you might be able to change it. But in the end, do Nebraska high schools and surrounding high schools have the talent to support that? I think that's what you have to think about too. So I'm glad to see Nebraska going back to a run-first offense because I think that's what they are.
It's a really good point. You have to find coaches that take what you do and enhance it, not take what you do and rip it to pieces and then try to rebuild it. Because Wisconsin had gotten a little stale on offense, so you enhance who you are. You don't deconstruct who you are. I think it's a really good point. All right, we're going to take a second, come back. We're going to talk some keys to the game. Who's healthy? There are some big injury questions on both sides of this field that could help decide this game. That's coming up next on this Locked On Badgers, Locked On Bama crossover episode. Appreciate everybody being here. Today's episode also brought to you by our incredible friends over at Mazda. Again, getting to work with awesome sponsors on the Locked On Podcast Network. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move, delivering confidence with every ride, top safety pick, more safety, IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. Plus incredible attention to detail from Napa leather upholstery to metallic detailing and all-wheel drive standard on every single crossover SUV. You can drive with confidence through almost any season. Make the everyday drives feel a little bit more like anything than every day. From smooth handling, intuitive controls, Mazda has you covered. Like all the players that are going to see the field this Saturday, they sweat every single detail because when you can make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode also brought to you by our incredible friends of the show over at FanDuel. Football's back, and we are so excited for it. And if you want to get on the action, spice up your Saturdays a little bit more, live in-game betting, futures, parlays, teasers, spreads, it's all available over on FanDuel. And right now there's an incredible offer. I've talked about it before on my channel. I've never seen FanDuel offer $300 in bonus bets. Right now, new customers bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets across the app to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because of the options. I already mentioned you can do any type of action you want, and the payouts are really quick. They're really fast. It's simple to use. If you are ready to play, download the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Lou, I almost want to hit on injuries a little bit and then kick it over to you if you have any specific X and O's questions. From a Badger fan standpoint, I look at Jam Miller, is he playing? I look at Ryan Williams, is he playing? I've already told you, I think they should take a couple more weeks, both of them, at least one more week, take their time, get ready, but also some defensive line injuries. Wisconsin's going to want to run the ball. Where is Alabama at health-wise coming into this?
Well, I don't think Tim Keenan will play. He had the tightrope surgery. That's what Tua had a few years ago, made it pretty famous. I think he'll be back for Georgia. Tim Keenan, Alabama took him to SEC Media Days, team leader from Birmingham, Alabama. Big, hefty dude right there in the middle. Would be awesome if he were available. I don't think he will be. Jam Miller, I think, is another story. I think Jam Miller may get some run. I had somebody contact me that has some contacts there, and they said, look, Jam may try and play because they want him to get game ready sort of is one thing to, to come out and be a great player, but you need to go out there and understand the speed of the game. And so with the Georgia game coming up, I think it'd be good to sort of knock out that first game jitters for him. I don't think he'll start, and I'm not sure he'll get any carries at all. I mean, he may just come out there and do some blocking. Who knows? But I do think he'll play, and Ryan Williams will play. I think he definitely will play. And look, it's time for him to make a move. He hadn't done a ton the latter part of last year and obviously the first part of this year. And he's too talented to not do something. He's really phenomenal. I'm with the AHSA radio network, so I got to see him in high school. One of the best high school players I've ever seen in the state of Alabama, and I've covered a ton of good players. And he's just special. He's got an it factor. But if you have an it factor and you don't use it, it doesn't matter. So then there's Jeremiah Beeman, another defensive lineman. I jokingly say he's got thighs like he's been on tour with Tina Turner. And unfortunately, he's out for the rest of the season. So I know Wisconsin's dealing with some injuries too. It's not just the quarterback. The center's got some problems, right?
Yeah, that's really the one Badger fans are tracking. So it was kind of officially announced that Billy Edwards wasn't going to play this weekend. That's the quarterback. I think internally we all knew that. Badger fans were pretty aware that he's not going to play this weekend. The one that they're tracking, and this is just a massive deal for Wisconsin, is the center, Jake Renfro. Renfro is a experienced guy. He was with Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. He was part of that team that played Bama, so he's got experience in big games. He was an all AAC center. And listen, Bama fans are super sharp. With the centers that you guys have had on your lines over the years, people know how important that spot is, the pivot in the line. And Wisconsin doesn't have a great backup center. So last weekend against Middle Tennessee State, there were a lot of snapping issues, timing issues, communication issues. The center wasn't making correct calls. And it just, if you don't have that piece in place, the rest of the offensive line looks out of place. They look ragged. They get lost on communication. They don't pull as crisp. So there's not a great feel right now. And I've talked to a couple people. It seems like there might be a little bit of gamesmanship going on in terms of we don't want to maybe let Bama know what this is going to look like. But I heard someone reach out and they said it's potentially possible that he plays. That was a quote. Potentially possible. So
it's almost a double negative, right? I mean,
well, okay. It's a big worry. Wisconsin's offensive line hasn't been great this year. A lot of that is due to the center not being hurt. And if he's not there, I think he's worth 7 to 10 points, to be completely honest, because without him, the drop off to that backup center who just is struggling snapping the ball, it just impacts everything Wisconsin wants to do. So you're dead on. It's a huge deal. I don't have a great feel if he's going to play or not. And even if he does, it's probably going to be in a limited capacity. So it's definitely a massive concern for the Badgers.
Yeah, and again, this defense should be a little hungry. The defense outside of Vanderbilt last year, the defense played really well. Now, somebody will say, what about Oklahoma? They lost 24-3. If you remember, I think there was a pick six in that game. There was also another interception and maybe another turnover that set up Oklahoma beautifully for easy scores. So the defense really didn't – they gave up some points, probably more than they should have. At the same time, when you get no help from the offense – I take a little bit of the blame off of them. But I think if the backup center's out, that really negates any advantage Wisconsin would have with Tim Keenan's absence.
Let me ask you this, because we're going to get into predictions as we kind of wrap up. And I definitely want to give you a chance if there's any other questions you had about Wisconsin as we kind of do this crossover together. What concerns you the most about this game? If you look at it and say, because FanDuel has this line, again, shout out official sponsor. Last I looked at minus 21 for Bama. So it's a pretty sizable mismatch here on the line. What concerns you? What do you look at this week and say that's maybe where Wisconsin could pull something different?
It's not necessarily anything in particular. I mean, I looked at Wisconsin's running backs and I thought, okay, they're probably better than this is even showing, but it's not Ron Dane. It's not Melvin Gordon. I mean, it's a few steps, maybe several steps away from that. The quarterback, again, I like what he brings to the table. I like that he was a true freshman starting last year. This is going to be a bit of a different thing for him. The offensive line, not vintage Wisconsin, but good enough. What scares me more than anything is I don't know what Alabama's going to do. And if they take this game with the same lax attitude they took Florida State, it's going to be a problem. I mean, Alabama's not 21 points better than any Power 4 team just about if they show up the way they did against Florida State. So it's really Alabama's mindset that worries me more than anything. Again, arrogance aside, I really believe the 21-point spread is pretty accurate, all things remaining equal. But if Alabama shows up and they, begin to let Wisconsin sort of hang around, and Wisconsin does this thing that Florida State did. Florida State did a great job of controlling the ball. Like every time I thought Alabama was going to get off the field, they would convert a third down every single time. And if Wisconsin's able to, go 1st and 10, 2nd and 7, 3rd and 2, and 1st and 10 again, and just march their way down the field without a big play, I mean, that can really suck the soul out of the team, and especially this Alabama defense, which needs even more of a pick-me-up, even though last week they looked fantastic.
Last question here for me, man, is if it starts a little sideways, I think a key to the game for the Badgers is they have to win the first quarter, or they have to.
Good point.
If it starts to get a little sideways, do people start to maybe boo a little bit? Does the crowd get uneasy? How does the team respond to that?
Boo, I don't think. It hadn't come to booing yet. I do think that it would take a lot more losing to get to booing. I've been there when they booed. So, but I think the crowd would be uneasy. It'd be uncomfortable. Because we all know as fans, and Alabama fans are big into recruiting. We know the talent we have. And we know that we just need a coach to sort of rally the troops and get them to play well. And then this should be a game that we win, 9.5 times out of 10. But if we have seen that sometimes this team shows up uninspired. And if they show up uninspired, anything can happen.
That's well said. Any questions do you have for me to finish this off on the Badgers?
How is your kicker?
It's a great question. I don't know.
Didn't your kicker last year, excuse me if I'm wrong, did he miss one kind of early on that may have turned the tide a little bit?
So it's a great question, and the truthful answer is we haven't really used him much this year. So he's 1-1. He hit one early. He's been in no pressure kick situations this year. He came over 2 years ago. Last year, he struggled. Quite frankly, it was not a great season. His name is Nathaniel Vakos, and I think I wouldn't say Badger fans would have a ton of confidence. And you're dead on. Special teams are a huge part of this, and I don't think there's a ton of confidence if he was in a pressure situation on the road that Luke Fickell or maybe Badgers fans would have right now in that spot, because it hasn't been good for Wisconsin for a couple of years.
It's, kickers have sort of been Bama's bugaboo a time or two. So that could be something that comes into play. And also, the special teams just overall, I would like to see Alabama bust one on a punt return or a kickoff return or something like that. Because I feel like the talent's there. It's just all got to come together.
Save it for the next week. Save it for the dogs. You don't need to talk about this again.
Yeah, look, hey, my co-host and I say this all the time. You play your best once or twice a year. You play your worst once or twice a year. And I feel like Alabama has done one of each so far in these 2 games. And I want to save my best for a couple other games. I hope we play well, but I don't want to just pull out all the stops here for this particular game. I don't mean that as a disrespectful thing, though.
No, I don't take it as any disrespect. Yeah. Badger fans know who Bama is. Bama is one of the standards of college football for a reason. And 1 year where you win 9 games doesn't diminish that. Is there a chance you guys look forward to Georgia a little too much? I know there's a bye coming up, correct? But
the bye, I think, sort of cancels that out. And that's pretty cool about having 2 byes this year. As a college football fan, I wish there were no byes ever for anybody, because I want to watch my team play every week. But as a realist, I think having 2 byes is a good thing, especially for Alabama playing this schedule. And when you play the SEC schedule and then you have Wisconsin and you have Florida State on the schedule, that's a bear.
As well said. He is Luke Robinson, Locked On Bama. Ryan Herring's Locked On Badgers. Appreciate both fan bases checking into this crossover. Big game this weekend. When you're done here, go check out what Locked On's doing with their college football preview. It's something only Locked On's going to be able to do for you. Ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12, alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley. Locked On's local experts. It's a college football preview that only Locked On can do. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Luke, looking forward to it this weekend, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Appreciate you. I hope that all the Wisconsin fans come down and have a blast.